Old money does not just survive inheritance. It survives crime, scandal, taxes, and even death by moving the family fortune where law can barely touch it. The strangest part is that some dynasties become more untouchable after the disaster. Mars Incorporated, private ownership. Forrest Mars Sr. did not build Mars for applause. He built it to stay out of reach. From McLean, Virginia, the Mars family still holds Mars Incorporated, the candy business Franklin Clarence Mars started and Forrest turned into a global food empire. You see the empire every day. M&M's, Snickers, Milky Way, Twix, Pedigree, Whiskas, and Royal Canin. Candy aisles, pet food supply chains, one private machine. Forbes put the family fortune at about $129 billion in 2026. But the real flex is what you do not see. No public shares, no activist raids, no quarterly confessional, no hostile buyer circling the gate. You keep control by refusing the market's invitation. Next, privacy becomes the product. Biltmore Estate, Tourist Kingdom. In 1930, while private ownership kept outsiders at the gate, Biltmore learned to charge admission to the gate itself. George Washington Vanderbilt II built the house in Asheville, North Carolina, with construction starting in 1889 and the doors opening in 1895. It had about 250 rooms, sitting inside an estate that once covered around 125,000 acres. Much of that land was later sold, and a large portion helped form Pisgah National Forest. But unlike the wider Vanderbilt slide, this branch survived by turning aristocratic display into ticketed heritage. Under descendants of Cornelia Vanderbilt, the estate became a privately owned historic house, winery, hotel, events venue, and brand. You inherit excess, package nostalgia, and make the public fund preservation. Next, land stops being scenery and becomes a shield. Grosvenor Estate Trust Shield. August 9th, 2016. Gerald Cavendish Grosvenor, 6th Duke of Westminster, dies, and the obvious bill looks brutal. 40% above the threshold on a fortune press estimates near £9 billion. But the play began in 1677. You turn a marriage settlement between Sir Thomas Grosvenor and Mary Davies into London Ground into Mayfair and Belgravia, and a family estate into Grosvenor Group, one of Britain's great urban landlord empires. Then you stop looking like the owner. Trustees hold legal title to United Kingdom resident trusts. Current and future Grosvenors hold the benefit. Hugh gets the title at 25. HMRC gets the paperwork. That is how land becomes dynasty. Walton family zeroed out GRATs. $253 billion in 2 years. That is what a Walmart stock surge can do when control is already locked inside family vehicles like Walton Enterprises LLC and Walton Family Holdings Trust. Now you add the quieter weapon, the zeroed out GRAT. You place fast-growing shares in trust. The trust pays you back through annuities calculated at the IRS rate. If the stock outruns that assumption, your heirs keep the excess with little or no gift tax. That is the trick. The tax code prices the future one way, Walmart prices it another. ProPublica reported Audrey Walton used a trust strategy that pushed estate tax avoidance to the edge. You keep the votes concentrated, the upside moving, and the IRS staring at yesterday's math. Cargill Macmillan private food empire. If the last dynasty hid behind culture, Cargill hides inside dinner. William Wallace Cargill started it in Iowa in 1865 as a grain storage business. The descendants kept it through Cargill and Macmillan marriages, then inheritance. Today, about 100 family members control one of the largest private companies in the United States, tied to Minnetonka, Minnesota. The machine reaches grain trading, animal feed, meat, shipping, food ingredients, and financial services. It reportedly handles roughly a quarter of United States grain exports. That is not a family business. That is infrastructure with a surname. Private control means no public ticker, fewer forced disclosures, and more room to move capital before outsiders see the map. Bloomberg reported a record $1.5 billion dividend after profits rose 44%. You do not own the pantry, you own the route to it. Mellon Dynasty Anti-Tax Machine. Andrew Mellon understood the trick from both sides of the table. From 1921 to 1932, he ran the United States Treasury, while the family fortune sat on banking, aluminum, oil, coal, and industrial finance. You build the pile, then you build the shelter. The Mellon machine ran through trusts, foundations, and institutions, turning private wealth into dynastic control. It also bought prestige. Mellon money helped build the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., where industrial fortune became civic virtue in marble. ProPublica later documented descendants using trusts and charitable vehicles to shield wealth from estate taxation. By 2020, heir Timothy Mellon gave $60 million to groups backing Donald Trump and Republicans. You protect inherited wealth, then fund the politics that protects it. Pritzker Family Trust War. In 2002, Liesl Pritzker Simmons takes the family machine to court. She sues her father and older cousins, claiming money was taken from her trusts. Her brother Matthew is pulled into the fight. Now the architecture is public. The fortune begins in 1957 when the Pritzkers buy the Hyatt House near Los Angeles International Airport. A.N. Pritzker and his sons turn that hotel into a private empire, then bury the wealth in a vast web of family trusts by the late 20th century. Here is how you defend a dynasty. You split ownership, lock up control, and make heirs rich on paper but weak in practice. Then Liesl detonates the documents. The family moves toward dividing the fortune, and the control system starts cutting its owners apart. Getty kidnapping and trust empire. The ear arrives before the money does. In 1973, John Paul Getty III is kidnapped in Italy, and the demand runs into millions. J. Paul Getty has the fortune. He also has the structure. Oil built the empire. Getty Oil made the name, but trusts and allowances decide who touches the cash. So you watch a family crisis hit a private firewall. Getty refuses to pay the full ransom until the kidnappers cut off his grandson's ear. Then the money moves, and even then, he reportedly lends part of it to his son at interest. Getty dies on June 6, 1976. His estate funds the J. Paul Getty Trust. Trauma becomes provenance. The ransom gets financed. The name gets hung in marble. Sackler Museum name laundering. You put the family name in marble before the subpoenas arrive. The Sacklers owned Purdue Pharma, maker of OxyContin, approved by the FDA in 1995. Purdue's marketing later became central to lawsuits over the opioid crisis. So you build another identity before the bill comes due. Sackler family members donated hundreds of millions to museums and universities, buying reputational distance and institutional legitimacy. The name went up at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Louvre, Tate, the Guggenheim, and Harvard. Then Nan Goldin and PAIN targeted those same prestige machines with protests, including prescription bottles dumped across museum floors. In the 2020s, museums began stripping the name away. That is the trick in reverse. The plaque becomes evidence, not tribute. Maxwell LaHogue Offshore Network, November 5, 1991. Robert Maxwell, British media tycoon and father of Ghislaine Maxwell, vanishes from his yacht near the Canary Islands. Then the books surface. Investigators find a massive hole in his company's pension funds, and the empire stops looking like media. It looks like extraction. Decades later, OCCRP and the Miami Herald examine leaked files from LaHogue, a Jersey offshore trust. The names are Maxwell family members and associates. The tools are offshore companies, trusts, secret stock deals, offshore payments, and structures tied to publicly traded United States companies. The purpose is simple: make creditors chase shadows. Make investigators follow paper across borders. When your reputation dies, the structure survives. That is the trick. Brooke Astor guardianship abuse case. Brooke Astor married into a machine built by John Jacob Astor, first from fur trading, then from New York real estate. As Vincent Astor's widow, she became old New York's public face of noblesse oblige, giving away more than $200 million through the Vincent Astor Foundation. Then age changed the battlefield. In 2004, her son Anthony Marshall gained power of attorney. The fortune no longer needed a hostile takeover. It needed access. Her will was amended. Her care was questioned. Reports described her sleeping on a urine-soaked couch while the estate moved around her. Astor died on August 13, 2007 at 105. In 2009, Marshall was convicted of grand larceny and conspiracy. You do not need offshore accounts when you control the nurses, the notary, and the room. South Dakota Dynasty Trusts. South Dakota is where old money learned a modern trick. You do not need a famous surname. You need the right trust charter. Alongside Nevada, Delaware, and Alaska, it became a fortress for dynasty trusts, generation-skipping transfer planning, and grantor trusts. You move assets in once, then aim them past children toward grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and descendants not yet born. The point is simple: minimize estate taxes, minimize generation-skipping taxes, stop the tax bill from appearing at every death. David Gamage, Brian Gall, and co-authors estimated that at least $4.1 trillion sits in trusts that should face wealth transfer taxation, but effectively sits outside existing transfer taxes. You build it, you bury it in law, and the wealthy dead keep voting with capital.